We've got a little bit of breaking news just into us. Actually, right as we were walking into the studio, we found out that former President Trump has now formally and officially made a new legal filing. And this one is one he's been hinting about for days now after the search of his Mar-a-Lago home, in which the feds essentially retrieved 11 sets of classified material. He wants something called a special master. What is that, right? That's basically a third party that looks through what was taken. It's coming, as we're learning more now from the judge overseeing this case, that we might not get a lot of reasons as to the why of this search. Judge Reinhardt, Bruce Reinhardt, saying today that he's got to look and see if he's going to make any of this public once the government turns over its proposed redactions. You know, it's going to cross out stuff that's sensitive. The judge is essentially saying, hey, if too much of this is sensitive, if too much is blacked out, if it looks like some kid took a Sharpie and just scribbled everywhere, like it may be meaningless to actually release this to the public. Let me bring in now our reporter who is all over this story for us, and that is Ryan Riley. Ryan, let me bring you in first on this developing news. This special master. I want to note here that former President Trump, since Friday, has hinted his team would do this. His attorney went out on an appearance and talked about wanting to do this. And now they're backing it up with the paperwork. They actually have filed now for this third-party review. Talk about the significance.
Yeah, I think it's about 2 weeks too late. If the lawyers had been on top of the game, I think this would have been something that would have been filed immediately after the search was conducted, because the FBI team has already spent, now nearly 2 weeks, factor in shipping, getting that information up there. They've had at least a week plus to look over these materials and be using the FBI sort team to decide what can go in and out. But there's one message, Hallie, that I really wanted to highlight here. And we had heard some reporting, I believe, from the New York Times about this, but I wanted to read this because it's something a message that is included in this lawsuit that was sent from one of President Trump's lawyers and delivered to a lawyer at the Justice Department on August 11th. And it's a very unusual message. And this was in the days after President Trump had ramped up a lot of the fear about the search and been making all of these public claims. And this was right before Merrick Garland held that press conference. And here's what the message said. President Trump wants the Attorney General to know that he has been hearing from people all over the country about the raid. If there was one word to describe their mood, it is angry. The heat is building up. The pressure is building up. Whatever I can do to take the heat down, to bring the pressure down, just let us know. It's a very unusual message for a target in this instance of a ongoing criminal investigation to send to the Attorney General. I mean, obviously, he's the former president, so everything about this is a little bit unusual. But essentially what he's doing is taking advantage of a lot of that heat that he himself has caused within within the base of his supporters, and basically saying, hey, listen, there's a lot of people who are really mad about this, and essentially trying to warn Merrick Garland about going forward with this. It's kind of a little bit of a mob-esque sort of message, and it's interesting that they just chose to include that in this lawsuit.
Okay, so I need to tell you about something absolutely devastating that just happened to Donald Trump and his entire strategy for controlling the Justice Department, because a federal appeals court has just unanimously disqualified Alina Habba, Trump's former personal lawyer, from serving as New Jersey's top federal prosecutor. This is a total destruction of Trump's attempt to install his loyalists in key law enforcement positions. The court found that Habba's appointment violated federal law. They said the administration engaged in unlawful maneuvers to put her in that position. They ruled that Trump cannot bypass established statutory and constitutional procedures just because he wants his people in power. And this ruling does not just affect Habba. It potentially invalidates cases she oversaw while she was illegally serving in that role. The revenge prosecutions against Trump's critics, the investigations she launched against his enemies, all of it is now in jeopardy because the person who was running those cases was never legally authorized to be there in the first place. But before we go any further, real quick, let's be honest, you can't really trust mainstream media anymore. That's why we built Pump Politics, to bring you real stories, real context, and no corporate spin. If you want to stay ahead of the headlines, join our free newsletter. We'll send the news straight to your inbox every day. Just click the link in the description to join. And if you just want to support what we're doing, join us. Be part of the community that actually cares about the truth. All right, let's get back to the video.
Essentially trying to warn Merrick Garland about going forward with this. It's kind of a little bit of a mob-esque sort of message, and it's interesting that they just chose to include that in this lawsuit.
There's this new NBC News polling that's out showing that nearly 60% of Americans, 57%, think that the investigations into the former president's potential wrongdoing should continue, right? And that is coming amid, I think, what you were seeing from some of the former president's Republican allies, calls for what they describe as transparency. They want to see this affidavit released. The Department of Justice has said, hey, there could be real concerns if we share too much of why we searched Mar-a-Lago in the first place. That could actually hurt the investigation. Congressman Adam Schiff, just this weekend said, hey, that could basically be giving Trump allies a roadmap as to how to thwart this investigation. I'm paraphrasing here. How significant is it going to be?
Let me explain what happened, because the details here are extraordinary and they expose exactly how Trump has been trying to game the system. The Federal Vacancies Reform Act is a law that governs how temporary appointments work in the executive branch. When a Senate-confirmed position becomes vacant, the president can temporarily fill it with an acting official while waiting for the Senate to confirm a permanent replacement. But there are rules, there are time limits, there are procedures that have to be followed. You cannot just keep someone in an acting role indefinitely. You cannot fire people and reappoint the same person over and over again to circumvent the rules. And that is exactly what Trump tried to do with Habba. According to the court, Trump extended Habba's interim role by firing the people who were supposed to replace her and then reappointing her unlawfully. He was using terminations as a way to reset the clock and keep his preferred loyalist in place. The court saw through this scheme immediately. Judge D. Michael Fisher wrote that it is apparent that the current administration has been frustrated by some of the legal and political barriers to getting what it wants. He said the administration's efforts to elevate Habba demonstrate the difficulties it has faced in trying to install its preferred people. This is a federal appeals court judge saying in a written opinion that Trump was trying to cheat the system and that the courts are not going to let him get away with it. The attorneys who challenged Habba's appointment are calling this ruling historic. They say it is the first instance where an appellate court has determined that President Trump cannot bypass established statutory and constitutional procedures. Think about what that means. For years, Trump has been testing the limits of executive power. He has been pushing boundaries and seeing what he can get away with. He has been treating laws and procedures as obstacles to be circumvented rather than rules to be followed. And now, for the first time, an appellate court has drawn a clear line. They have said, no, you cannot do this. The procedures exist for a reason. The laws apply to you just like they apply to everyone else. And your attempts to game the system have been exposed and rejected. Come on, are you kidding me right now? Trump tried to install his personal lawyer as a federal prosecutor by repeatedly firing people and reappointing her in violation of federal law. He wanted a loyalist in that position so badly that he was willing to break the rules to put her there. And now an appeals court has unanimously said that was illegal. Habba is disqualified. She should never have been serving in that role. And the cases she handled while illegally in office are now potentially invalid. This is not just a loss for Trump. This is a complete demolition of his strategy for weaponizing the Justice Department. He cannot put whoever he wants in key positions. He cannot bypass Senate confirmation through illegal schemes. He has to follow the law like everyone else. And when he does not, the courts will stop him. The implications extend beyond just Habba. This ruling follows a similar case where another Trump appointee, Lindsay Halligan in Virginia, was also found to be improperly appointed. Her cases, including prosecutions against James Comey and Letitia James, have been invalidated. The revenge prosecutions that Trump wanted so badly are falling apart because the people he installed to bring those cases were never legally authorized to be there. Trump's entire strategy depended on having his loyalists in prosecutor positions, and the courts are systematically finding that those loyalists were illegally appointed. All right, so let me take you deeper into what happened here, because this ruling exposes not just one illegal appointment, but a systematic pattern of the Trump administration trying to circumvent the rules that govern how federal positions are filled. The Habba disqualification is connected to broader problems with how Trump has been trying to staff the Justice Department, and the consequences of these rulings go far beyond just removing one person from one job. Let me walk you through the legal issues, what the court actually said, and why this matters so much for the cases that Habba was handling. Let me start with the Federal Vacancies Reform Act, because understanding this law is essential to understanding why Habba's appointment was illegal. The FVRA was passed by Congress to establish clear rules for how temporary appointments work. When a Senate-confirmed position, like a U.S. attorney, becomes vacant, there are a few options. The president can nominate someone new and send that nomination to the Senate for confirmation. While waiting for confirmation, the president can temporarily fill the position with an acting official. But there are limits on how long that acting official can serve. The law is designed to prevent presidents from just installing whoever they want in important positions without going through the confirmation process that the Constitution requires. The problem with Haba's appointment is that Trump tried to game this system. He did not want to go through Senate confirmation for the New Jersey U.S. Attorney position. He wanted Haba there, his personal lawyer, someone he trusted to be loyal to him above all else. So the administration found ways to extend her tenure that violated the spirit and letter of the FVRA. When her temporary appointment was supposed to expire, they would fire people and restructure things in ways that allowed them to reappoint her. They treated the procedural requirements as obstacles to be circumvented rather than rules to be followed. The Third Circuit Court of Appeals saw through all of this. The ruling on December 1st, 2025, affirmed a lower court's decision disqualifying Haba. The appeals court found that the administration's maneuvers violated the Federal Vacancies Reform Act. They concluded that Haba was not legally authorized to serve as U.S. Attorney for New Jersey, and they made clear that the administration's frustration with legal barriers does not give it the right to ignore those barriers. Judge Fisher's opinion is particularly notable for how directly it calls out what the administration was trying to do. He wrote that it is apparent that the current administration has been frustrated by some of the legal and political barriers it has encountered. He said the efforts to elevate Haba demonstrate the difficulties the administration has faced in trying to install its preferred appointees. This is remarkable language for a federal appeals court opinion. The judge is essentially saying, we see what you are doing. We know you are trying to cheat, and we are not going to let you. The frustration the administration feels about having to follow the rules is not a legal justification for breaking those rules. The unanimous nature of the ruling is also significant. All three judges on the panel agreed that Haba was improperly appointed. This was not a close call where reasonable judges disagreed. This was a clear case of the administration violating federal law. The unanimity makes it harder for the administration to claim that the ruling is somehow illegitimate or the result of activist judges. Three different judges, including judges appointed by presidents of both parties, all looked at the facts and reached the same conclusion. Haba's appointment was unlawful. The attorneys who brought the challenge to Haba's appointment are describing this as a historic ruling. They say it is the first time an appellate court has determined that President Trump cannot bypass established statutory and constitutional procedures. That characterization is significant because it establishes a precedent. Future administrations, including this one, now know that courts will scrutinize temporary appointments and will not tolerate schemes designed to evade the confirmation process. The rules matter, the procedures matter, and trying to game the system will result in judicial intervention. Now let me connect this to the broader pattern because Haba is not the only Trump appointee who has been found to be improperly serving. Lindsay Halligan, another Trump loyalist, was installed as interim U.S. Attorney in Virginia through similar questionable procedures. Her appointment has also been invalidated by the courts, and the cases she was handling, including prosecutions against James Comey and Letitia James, have been thrown out as a result. The revenge prosecutions that Trump wanted against his critics are collapsing because the prosecutors he installed to bring those cases were never legally authorized to be there. This is a devastating blow to Trump's strategy for using the Justice Department against his enemies. Trump has made no secret of his desire to punish people who crossed him. He wanted Comey prosecuted for investigating him. He wanted Letitia James prosecuted for bringing fraud cases against him. He wanted his critics to face the full weight of federal law enforcement. And to make that happen, he tried to install loyal prosecutors who would bring the cases he wanted brought. But he did it by breaking the rules. He appointed people improperly. He circumvented the confirmation process. He used illegal maneuvers to keep his loyalists in positions they were not authorized to hold. And now the courts are unraveling all of it. The cases that Haba oversaw while illegally serving as U.S. Attorney are now in jeopardy. Defense attorneys can challenge any prosecution she initiated on the grounds that the prosecutor who brought the case was not legally authorized to do so. Grand jury proceedings she supervised may be invalid. Indictments she approved may be subject to dismissal. The legal chaos created by her improper appointment will take years to sort out, and the people Trump wanted punished may escape accountability entirely, not because they are innocent, but because the prosecutor pursuing them was illegally appointed. There is a profound irony here. Trump has spent years complaining about the Justice Department being weaponized against him. He has claimed that prosecutions of his allies and investigations of his conduct were politically motivated and illegitimate. And his response to those claims was to actually weaponize the Justice Department, to install loyalists in key positions who would pursue his enemies. to bring prosecutions that were openly driven by Trump's personal vendettas rather than legitimate law enforcement objectives. The difference is that Trump's weaponization was illegal. He broke the rules in ways that courts can identify and remedy. And now those remedies are being applied, disqualifying his appointees and invalidating the cases they brought. The political fallout from this ruling will be significant. Trump has been telling his supporters that he is in control, that he has installed his people throughout the government, and that his agenda is being implemented. But the courts keep finding that his people were installed illegally, his prosecutors are being disqualified, his cases are being thrown out, his schemes are being exposed and rejected. The image of control that Trump wants to project is contradicted by the reality of court after court finding that his administration is breaking the law. The ruling also raises questions about what other appointments might be vulnerable to challenge. If the administration was willing to use illegal maneuvers to install Haba and Halligan, how many other positions have been filled through similarly questionable procedures? How many other Trump appointees are serving in roles they are not legally authorized to hold? How many other cases and decisions could be invalidated if courts examine the underlying appointments? The Haba ruling is not just about one position. It is a warning that the administration's approach to staffing has been fundamentally lawless, and that the consequences of that lawlessness are going to keep emerging. All right, so let me break this down into what it actually means and why you should care about it, because this ruling is not just about one lawyer losing one job. This is about whether the president can install whoever he wants in key positions by breaking the rules. This is about whether the revenge prosecutions Trump wanted against his enemies will survive judicial scrutiny. And this is about whether there are any limits on how Trump can use the Justice Department. Let me give you the key takeaways. Point number one, the appeals court found that Trump broke federal law in how he appointed Haba, and that is a huge deal. This is not a procedural technicality or a minor rule violation. The Federal Vacancies Reform Act exists to ensure that important positions are filled through proper constitutional processes, including Senate confirmation for positions that require it. Trump did not want to go through that process. He wanted his personal lawyer in a prosecutor position, and he was willing to break the rules to make it happen. The appeals court unanimously found that what he did was illegal. That finding has legal force. It means Haba was never legitimately serving in that role, and it establishes that courts will not tolerate schemes designed to evade the confirmation process. Point number two, the cases Haba handled while illegally serving are now potentially invalid, and that threatens Trump's entire revenge prosecution strategy. Think about what this means. Haba was overseeing cases. She was making prosecutorial decisions. She was approving indictments and guiding investigations. And now a court has found she was never authorized to do any of that. Defense attorneys will challenge every case she touched. They will argue that prosecutions brought by an illegally appointed prosecutor are void. Some of those challenges will succeed. Cases will be dismissed. Investigations will be invalidated. The revenge prosecutions that Trump wanted so badly, the cases against his critics and enemies, are falling apart because the people bringing them were illegally appointed. Trump tried to weaponize the Justice Department, but he did it by breaking the law. And now his scheme is collapsing. Point number three, this is part of a pattern with Lindsay Halligan also being disqualified and her cases against Comey and Letitia James being thrown out. Haba is not an isolated case. The same thing happened with another Trump appointee in Virginia. Halligan was similarly found to be improperly serving. Her prosecutions of James Comey and Letitia James, cases that Trump personally demanded, have been invalidated. The pattern is clear. Trump tried to install loyalists throughout the Justice Department to bring the cases he wanted. He did it by breaking the rules, and courts are systematically finding that those appointments were illegal and that the cases they brought must be dismissed. Trump's entire strategy for prosecuting his enemies is being dismantled by the judiciary. Point number four, the judge's language calling out the administration's frustration with legal barriers is extraordinary. Federal judges usually use measured language. They do not typically call out the political motivations behind government actions in such direct terms. But Judge Fisher's opinion explicitly notes that the administration has been frustrated by legal and political barriers, and that its efforts to elevate Haba demonstrate the difficulties it has faced. The judge is saying, "We know what you were trying to do. We know you were frustrated that the law would not let you just put whoever you wanted in these positions. And we know you tried to circumvent those barriers through illegal maneuvers." That kind of direct judicial criticism is rare. It reflects how obvious and egregious the administration's conduct was. Point number five, this ruling establishes precedent that Trump cannot bypass statutory and constitutional procedures. The attorneys who brought this challenge are calling it historic, the first appellate court determination that Trump cannot simply ignore the rules governing federal appointments. That precedent matters. It means future attempts to circumvent the confirmation process will face immediate legal challenge. It means the administration knows that courts are watching and will intervene when rules are broken. It means Trump cannot assume that he can do whatever he wants and face no consequences. The limits on executive power that exist in statute and the Constitution are real, and courts will enforce them. Here is the bottom line. The Third Circuit Court of Appeals has unanimously disqualified Alina Habba from serving as New Jersey's top federal prosecutor, finding that Trump broke federal law by repeatedly manipulating her appointment to keep her in a role she was not authorized to hold. The ruling exposes what the court called unlawful maneuvers to install loyalists and notes that the administration has been frustrated by legal barriers. Cases Habba handled while illegally serving are now potentially invalid. This follows a similar ruling disqualifying Lindsay Halligan in Virginia and invalidating her prosecutions of James Comey and Letitia James. Trump's entire strategy for using the Justice Department against his enemies is collapsing because he tried to do it by breaking the law. Trump wanted revenge. He wanted his critics prosecuted. He wanted his enemies punished. And he thought he could make it happen by installing his personal lawyer and other loyalists in prosecutor positions without going through proper procedures. He was wrong. The courts have found that his appointments were illegal. The cases brought by those illegally appointed prosecutors are being thrown out. The revenge prosecutions are failing, not because the targets are innocent, but because Trump could not be bothered to follow the rules. This is what accountability looks like. This is the system working. Trump tried to cheat. He tried to game the appointment process. He tried to circumvent constitutional requirements, and the courts caught him. They examined what he did. They found it violated federal law, and they imposed consequences, disqualifying his appointees and invalidating the cases they brought. Trump is not above the law. He cannot just do whatever he wants. And when he breaks the rules, courts will stop him. The irony is thick. Trump spent years claiming the Justice Department was weaponized against him. He said prosecutions of his allies were illegitimate. He argued that proper procedures were not followed. And then he tried to actually weaponize the department, installing loyalists to prosecute his enemies. But his weaponization was illegal in ways that courts can identify and remedy. His appointees were not properly authorized. His maneuvers violated federal law. His schemes were exposed and rejected. The prosecutions he wanted are collapsing, and the accountability he tried to avoid is being applied to him instead. Habba was Trump's personal lawyer before she became a prosecutor. She defended him in court. She appeared on television supporting him. She was loyal to Trump above all else. That is why he wanted her in the U.S. attorney position, not because she was qualified, not because she would follow the law, but because she would do what Trump wanted. She would bring the cases he demanded. She would punish the people he hated. And that is exactly why she should never have been in that role, and why the courts were right to remove her. The ruling sends a message. You cannot bypass Senate confirmation through illegal schemes. You cannot keep reappointing the same loyalists by firing the people who are supposed to replace them. You cannot treat federal law as an obstacle to be circumvented rather than a rule to be followed. The procedures exist for a reason. They ensure that important positions are filled by qualified people who have been properly vetted. Trump tried to ignore those procedures, and now he is paying the price. The cases Habba touched are in jeopardy. The revenge prosecutions are failing. The loyalists are being disqualified, and Trump, who thought he could control the Justice Department by breaking the rules, is watching his scheme collapse under judicial scrutiny. This is not what winning looks like. This is not what strength looks like. This is an administration being caught cheating and being forced to face consequences. And every American who believes in the rule of law should be glad to see it. All right, that is what I have got for you today. This story has major implications for all of Trump's Justice Department appointees and for the cases they have been handling. Make sure you are subscribed and you have notifications turned on, because there are going to be more developments as courts continue to examine Trump's appointment schemes. Drop a comment below and tell me what you think. Should the cases Habba handled be thrown out? Do you think other Trump appointees will be disqualified? I want to hear from you, and I will see you in the next one.